Welcome to the Catholic Talks. This is a program where Catholics can learn by chit-chatting about the faith.
In this program, we seek to know about Christ through scriptures, tradition, and typology, which leads us to know Christ in prayer and become another Christ as we gain virtues.
Tonight, we are broadcasting the prayer series.
In this series, we will talk about how we can nurture our relationship with God by communicating with Him and knowing Him in prayer. We will also address difficulties in prayer and provide suggestions so that our prayer life grows as we do. Thank you for being here tonight. Our program will start in a moment.
Hello, this is Joby Provido, and I am your host for this episode of the Catholic Talks. In this prayer series, we will be talking about spiritual reading. I like to read stuff. And most often my emotions get triggered depending on what I read. For example, when I read Dolan's Cadillac by Stephen King, I was ecstatic with delight when the main character's plans were coming to fruition. And when I read also Christina Rosenthal by Jeffrey Archer, I found myself sobbing at the end of the story for a few minutes. And it just goes to show that what enters us can change us, especially what we read, especially what we watch, and what we hear. And so today, when we read the news or we browse the internet, we are constantly bombarded with news that is violent or depressing or sad. And most often in social media, we see only the good things that our friends post, as if their life were really good. Maybe they're really good, and there's no problem with that. But sometimes it makes us feel that we have to compete. How come we ask ourselves, why is our life not as good as theirs? No, and so we're trying to compete, and we question our life, and maybe that's really stressful. And maybe an indication of that kind of stress is that in all of history that we have an all-time high in suicides, no, and so that's really sad. But it is an indicator of how people feel. So some groups like to address this by some sort of Eastern meditation. So you do this, and then the goal is tranquility, some sort of peace. And while one might achieve that kind of peace, the truth of it is that when we come back to the real world, we're still faced with real suffering and with real problems. So they haven't gone away. We just had a temporary tranquility. So how should we address this onslaught of problems and negative input? Well, as Christians, we try to find a balance. We purposely make a balance. Okay? So what does that mean? We accept that there are bad things that we cannot control, but we balance them with good things that we can control. Okay? So how does that work? What's the physics involved in that? So for example, when I look at posts on my Facebook, I see problems here and there, something bad happened to a friend, frustrating news, something in politics, and but once in a while I read a post that makes me really feel good. So sometimes just one post lifts my spirits, and after reading all that bad news, my spirit is buoyed. No, it kind of negates all the bad things I've read, and it's the same thing that happens in our lives. The negative things are constantly contributing to extinguish that fire of hope burning in our hearts. We need something to help us keep that flame of hope burning. And for Christians, the most basic way to do this is through meditation and spiritual reading. Now, we've taken meditation in a different episode, and so we will focus on spiritual reading on this episode. As its name connotes, spiritual reading is reading some spiritual material, such as lives of saints, thoughts of holy people, that show how we can grow in holiness. While meditation is a quest to find what God wants us to do, spiritual reading is to reinforce our lives with enriching things that that uplifts us, that uplifts our souls. So if media can drown our hopes, we can also use media, spiritual reading specifically, as a life jacket to buoy us when so we can breathe again above the waves of depressing media. How do we do spiritual reading? First, we want to commit to do this every day at the same time, if we can do that. So choose a time and a place that has the least distractions. Choose a time when your mind is not too busy. I like to do it in the morning because my mind's still fresh. If I try to do it at night, I'm just recalling everything I've done during the day, and then nothing comes into my head. So now it will depend also on different people how you which part of the day your mind is more receptive to reading. So that depends on you. Um, you also want to choose a time when most people are not likely to distract you. So maybe you're at home, and maybe the family is rises up at 7 o'clock, and things get chaotic already after that time. So maybe you want to do it early before that time, earlier before that time, or maybe late at night when everybody's settling down. No? So it's also up to you and up to your schedule, the schedule also of the people around you. Choose a room or a place that is far from where normal activity happens in your house or in the office if you choose to do it in the office. So a time and a place is important. It's your time, so you have that 10-15 minutes that you want. So as I already said, maybe a beginner might start with 10 minutes a day until you get into the rhythm of it, and then move to 15 minutes or maybe longer. You can do that. You can change also what you're reading every day, but I suggest staying with a particular book, a particular manuscript, instead of arbitrarily switching books every day. No, by studying the life of a saint or the thoughts of a holy person every day, we get to understand the main flow of ideas so that it really sinks in. So, what can a beginner read? As I said, Lives of Saints and Thoughts of Saints, of Thoughts of Holy People. So, The Interior Castle by Saint Teresa of Avila, that's one good thing. The Life of Saint Francis of Assisi, if you can find any book on that. Story of a Soul by Saint Teresa of Lisieux. The Seven-Story Mountain by Thomas Merton. Any book on the life of Pope Saint John Paul II is good. Books by Archbishop Fulton Sheen are always wonderful to read, any of his books. Books on the approved apparitions of Our Lady, such as Fatima, Lourdes, Mexico, specifically Our Lady of Guadalupe. Those are good too. Other good titles are True Devotion to the Blessed Virgin by Louis de Montfort, Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, Everlasting Man by G.K. Chesterton, Mary of Nazareth by Federico Suarez. Those are good too. Books by Pope St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI are really good. So, books are good, but sometimes we don't need to take spiritual reading literally. We don't need to read to do spiritual reading. Maybe a good homily on YouTube is good. Watching it, listening to it is good. Homilies are meant to challenge us to live holy lives. So, and that's exactly what spiritual reading aims to do. So it is the same as spiritual reading, except it uses a different medium. So that's good. Television shows of Archbishop Fulton Sheen are great if you can find them. Podcasts are great too, especially those that are in a series. So 10 to 15 minutes a day isn't too long for spiritual reading, I think. Sometimes, we take longer than 15 minutes browsing at our Facebook feed. It happens to me sometimes, and that doesn't really add much to our life. But let's cut it down maybe and use that time for spiritual reading that can have an effect on our lives. It can really have a real effect on our lives. So let's use that time for something that can uplift our lives. So let it become a habit. They say people who habitually do spiritual reading are more cheerful because there's this kind of hope in their hearts that are kindled by the good things that they read. or they watch or they listen to. So do it starting today, and hopefully it becomes a habit with you. That is it for this episode of A Catholic Talks, and may God bless you, and hope to see you next episode. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Catholic Talks. This is a program where Catholics can learn by chit-chatting about the faith.
In this program, we seek to know about Christ through scriptures, tradition, and typology, which leads us to know Christ in prayer and become another Christ as we gain virtues. Join us each Wednesday at 8 p.m. Let's chit-chat about the faith. See you next week. Good night.